Good morning everybody. It's a lovely cool morning here in Port Shepstone, South Africa. We welcome you to our series on devotions that we're running in the book of Proverbs, just in our journey to try and find this sometimes elusive thing that we call wisdom. We're looking, have been looking this last week or two at the issue of wealth, how to handle wealth. But wealth is not just about money, it's also about people. And people who have friends are some of the wealthiest people that I know. So we're on this subject of friendship, and we've been talking about what makes a good friendship work. We've spoken about compatibility, we've spoken about, the chemistry that happens between friends, all these C's that we have been doing. We've spoken about counsel, we've spoken about correction is the one for today. I want to talk about people who have friends who trust their friends enough to guide them and sometimes even to correct them in their lives. Proverbs 27 verse 6 is a great verse and encourages us with this. It says this: wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. You see, friends will tell you, fickle friends will tell you what they think you want to hear, whereas good friends, I think, are going to sometimes tell you what you may need to help. They kind of take on that role of the mentor that we were speaking about last week. Now, I'm always nervous when I suggest to you that we're allowed as friends to bring words of correction into one another's lives. I'm kind of nervous about that because I'm sure some guy's going to go and take this and abuse it and feel like he has a right or a responsibility at best to be able to correct his friends. I would warn you against that. And I would say you need real discernment to apply that which I'm about to talk to you about. You see, those who are entitled to bring correction are entitled to bring correction because they have a measure of maturity, there's a relationship of trust that exists, and there is a sense of credibility from which your standpoint should be if you seek to bring some measure of correction to people around you. But it is here. We need to understand that correction can be a good thing if it comes for the right reason from the right person. I need you to remember, if you're going to take this seriously, that your job as a friend is to facilitate God's plan and God's program in the life of your friend. And if through that filter you can think of the correction that you would want, so that you make the correction with God's agenda and God's heart in mind, that could safeguard you a whole lot of things. Sometimes we see friends in conflict with one another, which is always sad. But a good friendship should be able to stand that test. But here's a thing, if you want to know what's worth fighting about, the law that we, or a principle that we apply in our life here at the church, is that of the preference and principle law. We fight so often, or we disagree so often over issues of preference, where I want it this way and you want it that way, and I want it this color and you want it that color, and I want to go here and you want to go there. And these, at the end of the day, cause so much conflict between people, but actually they're just issues of personal preference. Sometimes, in order for our friendships to grow, we have to put personal preference down, and if we're going to disagree or we're going to correct somebody on an issue, it must be an issue of principle and an issue that is worth fighting. If we fight over issues of preference, we're in trouble, but for conversations to happen over issues of principle, that might be a completely different thing. I think in the scriptures there's a beautiful example in the story of David and the prophet Nathan, Nathan was his friend. He knew Nathan. Nathan was somebody who he respected. And one day Nathan came to David the king and said, "David, we have to have a conversation. I have a story to tell you." And David listened to the story of Nathan, and because David was a humble man, somebody who had achieved great things and yet had maintained a spirit of humility, was not always welcoming of the correction, but he understood that the correction was for his own good. So it's all very well being able to give correction to people, but if you're going to give it, I want to know, can you receive it? David gave correction to many people, I'm sure, but the beauty of David's heart was his willingness and his humility to receive correction from the prophet and his friend Nathan. Now today, as you go through your day, Be very careful about thinking that you can correct somebody. Jesus said if you have a speck in your beam in your own eye, what entitles you to take the speck out of somebody else's eye? So be very careful. But there may come times in your life where you may need to draw alongside somebody and just say, hey, here's some information. I have a principle that I'd like to share with you, not a preference, and begin to share with them, all with the agenda to get that person closer to God and to fulfill the calling of God upon that person's life. That's the only reason we do it. But at the same time, if somebody comes to you, if a friend comes to you today with words of possible correction, I hope that your heart will be humble. I hope that your heart and my heart will be open to hear what our friends have to say to us. At the end of the day, it's still going to be your choice what you do with that information. I hope you make a great choice today in giving it and receiving it. Thanks, guys. Let's go save the world, but have a fantastic week, and we're just praying for you all, and in the midst of everything that's going on, you hang in there. You're going to be fine.